He has a fart outage.
Wait, hold on. What did he do the first time to impact these then? Because I can tell you what he did. I can tell you what he did to harm your kids. I can tell you what he did to hurt your kid's ability to buy a house, but I can't tell you what he did to help them. This is the real world, and that's why we're asking left kids.
Have you seen the last 4 years of cracks and stuff?
Yes. So I'm gonna hold on, Tim. I'm gonna continue my point here. So under his first administration, he signed changes to the Dodd-Frank Act. Prior to those changes, a private company like your Zillows, your BlackRock, etc., had to wait 90 days before they put in a cash offer, which actually made it so that more people like your kids, like myself, because I bought my house with my VA home loan in 2018. We were able to.
What was your interest rate?
I'm in the middle of speaking, Calvin. I understand it's hard to have impulse control, but I'm in the middle of speaking. So that's what I was saying. When there was a 90-day hold.
Finish up in your rabbit hole.
Hey. I'm not in a rabbit hole. I'm trying to fucking explain some shit. You can't interrupt my point. You don't know you can't respond to a thing you haven't heard yet. Unless you're fucking psychic, which you should not be on TikTok. You should be in the fucking circus. So as I was saying, when he signed those changes to the Dodd-Frank Act and removed that 90-day freeze period from corporations being able to buy houses, it actually made it so that single families like myself could buy houses without having to compete with major businesses, because when you look at real estate, the average house is only on the market for 60 days in most markets. So when it was 90 days before they could put in an offer, they were only getting the house that nobody else wanted anyway. Once the Dodd-Frank Act was changed and they were able to put in cash offers on day one, we saw the housing market dry up, because the minute a house goes on the market, now a company can come in and just snatch it up, which makes it much harder for people like me, people like your kids, etc., to buy that house. So that's why I said you can't point to something he did to help people buy houses, but I can point to something he did to hurt people's ability to buy houses. Now you may go, because that's how a conversation works. You're gonna have to unmute though. Since you were a question, go. So again, how is he going to help your kids buy a house when the last time he hurt your kids' ability to buy a house? I mean, are you running? Don't run now, Calvin. You made this whole big stink about your kid's ability to buy a house, and I agree our kids should be able to buy houses. I have a 15-year-old and an 11-year-old. I want to have this conversation, but you're going to have to point to me how he's going to help when he actively heard it last time. Wasn't it Steve Mnuchin that started raising the rates? Because I know when I bought my house in 2016, prior to his reign, I got it for 2.75 was the interest rate on my mortgage. And I know it's mine is 2.75, and that was after a refinance. I got to refinance during the pandemic because I got put out of work, so they gave me a forbearance, which allowed me to refinance. Prior to that, it was 3.9, but after the refi, it was 2.7. Yeah. My entire mortgage with the escrow and everything, taxes and fucking all that shit included, your taxes, insurance, is $750 out the door for a 5-bedroom.
Greetings, I'm Timothy Snyder. It's the summer of 2021, and I am revisiting my book on tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. I'm doing this in part because it's been almost 5 years since I wrote the book. I wrote it in late 2016, trying to prepare Americans for the Trump administration, trying to prepare Americans for the decline of democracy around the world that we faced in the last 5 years. But I'm also revisiting it because it's coming out again in a new version, a graphic edition with updated text. I think the new edition is much more interesting and much deeper, thanks to the fantastic work of the illustrator Nora Krug than the original book was. But I'm also just happy in general to have a chance to speak about the things in the book which, alas, are still with us. So I think it's right to say that when On Tyranny appeared, much of the reaction was, this is an exaggeration. Over the course of the 4 or 5 years since, most of the things that I talked about as possibilities in the book became realities. And of course, the larger point of the book is, if you can anticipate these things, if you can recognize them as they're happening, as they're incipient, then sometimes you can put a stop to them. So I think this, this unfortunately is the case. It's unfortunately the case that our problems were not just Mr. Trump. Our problems have to do with our institutions, with our constitutional system, and fundamentally with ourselves. So if we're going to solve the problems, we have to begin with ourselves, and that's where the book begins, with the things that we can do as individuals. Today I'm on lesson 17, which is listen for dangerous words. I'm going to read the lesson and then say a few words about what I meant by it. So, number 17, listen for dangerous words. Be alert to the use of the words extremism and terrorism. Be alive to the fatal notions of emergency and exception. Be angry about the treacherous use of patriotic vocabulary. So when I'm writing these words in 2016, what I have in mind as a historian are historical examples. I'm thinking of moments where a state of exception or the idea of an exception was used to shift from one kind of political system to another. Perhaps the classical example is the transition from the Weimar Republic in Germany to the Nazi regime in 1933, which Hitler justified by way of an emergency, which generated a state of exception. A more recent example is Russia at the very end of the 20th century, where Mr. Putin was able to manufacture what seemed like an emergency, a war, which justified the transition into a more authoritarian regime. But the truth of the matter is that we don't need those historical examples. If we look hard enough at ourselves, we can recognize something like this can happen to us, because something like this did just happen to us. At the end of the year 2020 and at the beginning of the year 2021, we as Americans passed through a fake emergency. The fake emergency was the idea that an election was stolen. Nothing of the sort happened, but a fake emergency is the cover under which a real coup d'etat can take place. And of course, a coup d'etat was attempted. Insofar as that coup d'etat was resisted and defeated, it's in part because people were able to listen for and recognize dangerous words. People understood that when the president spoke of enemies, he often meant good citizens. People recognized that when the president spoke of fraud, he meant votes that he didn't want counted. People recognized that when the president spoke of cities, he meant black people and his idea that black people's votes shouldn't count. When we listen for dangerous words, when we learn from history and from our own history what words actually mean, we can get out a little bit ahead and stop the worst things from happening. Another very dangerous idea, which reappeared in late 2020, was the idea of a stab in the back. The stab in the back is the notion that the good guys would have won if not for the traitors at home. The stab in the back idea comes precisely from Germany in the early 20th century. It's the idea that Germany would have won the First World War had not the Jews and the socialists betrayed Germany at home. One of the things that I realized was dangerous, or that I recognized as a dangerous word in late 2020, was this idea that Mr. Trump articulated of being himself stabbed in the back, the idea that he, the most powerful man after all in the world, that he was a victim, that everyone was lined up against him, that he would have won had it not been for those traitors. That's a historical pattern which I noticed, but not only I noticed that. Fortunately, people who are smarter and more important than me also noticed that pattern and recognize that the stab in the back is not just a lie. The stab in the back is also an excuse. The stab in the back is a reason to say, they struck first, therefore all I'm doing is striking back. The stab in the back is a way that the powerful have of making themselves seem like the victims. The stab in the back is a way of saying that anything goes. We resisted that. We overcame it, at least for now. But those dangerous words of 2020, the big lie that Mr. Trump won the election. The big lie that the election was not carried out well, those dangerous words are still with us. We recognize them, many of us did, and that was very important. The next step, of course, is going to be good enough, is to become good enough patriots that we can find truths and that we can find reassuring words and that we can find better electoral institutions so that nothing like this ever happens again. Anyway, that was lesson 17. Listen for dangerous words. Thank you.
Is that right? Oh, shit. I didn't know that, but all right.
I'm Timothy Snyder. I'm speaking to you about my book on tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. I'm very glad now in the summer of 2021 to have an occasion to return to this book. The occasion is that there will be a new edition of it, a graphic edition, in my view, a much better edition, thanks to the hard work of the artist Nora Krook. As I've been working with Nora on this book in the last year, I've had occasion to rethink the lessons, to update some of the text, but most of all, to think about what's enduring about the book. I wrote the book very quickly. The book's had a much longer life than I thought it would have. It's been very gratifying to see it used not just in the United States, but also around the world, from Eastern Europe to Hong Kong. This has been humbling for me and very important for me in various ways. What I'm doing now is I'm reflecting on each of the lessons, now means summer 2021, and try to extract where I was coming from at the time, but also suggest how these lessons might be useful in the years to come. In the lessons, as readers of the book will know, I tried not to be too specific about the US, tried not to be too specific about political parties or individuals, because I think the threats to democracy are both international and also run deeper. I think that's proved to be the case, although we have a different president in the United States now. The problems we face, the fundamental problems, are still the same. The way the book has been recast has been to adjust for that, to look perhaps a little bit more broadly into the future. But anyway, what I'm doing now is reflecting on each of the lessons, and we're making a video for each one. We're now up to number 18, lesson 18, which is be calm when the unthinkable arrives. I'm going to read the lesson and then say a few words about it. Be calm when the unthinkable arrives. Modern tyranny is terror management. When the terrorist attack comes, remember that authoritarians exploit such events in order to consolidate power. The sudden disaster that requires the end of checks and balances, the dissolution of opposition parties, the suspension of freedom of expression, the right to a fair trial, and so on, is the oldest trick in the Hitlerian book. Do not fall for it. So in this lesson, I'm describing a normal pattern of politics. I'm describing what happens when we are thrown, when we are surprised, when we are made vulnerable by some event which seems to have been unthinkable, and which therefore is such a surprise, such a shock, that we open ourselves to the leader. We allow the leader to do things which otherwise perhaps we wouldn't have allowed the leader to do. I think, to put a positive cast on this, one of the interesting things about Americans was that by 2020, we had narrowed our notion of the unthinkable. In 2016, it was unthinkable to many Americans that an elected president would try to carry out an authoritarian regime change. That's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. That was very thinkable to me, and of course, it happened. By 2020, many Americans, and perhaps even enough Americans, were aware that such a thing was possible. In 2016, the stereotypical thing people said was, the institutions will save us. By 2020, we had enough Americans who cared enough to create new institutions or try to bolster the institutions that we had, such that an election could actually be carried out. Without the active engagement of people who realized that the unthinkable was in fact thinkable, that election would not have happened. What people in 2020 generally still found unthinkable was the notion that there could be a coup d'etat, on American soil. In late 2020, this is one of the things that I wrote about. I took a fair amount of heat for it at the time. I anticipated that Mr. Trump would try to carry out some kind of coup d'etat. I wrote the number of places that he would lose the election, but nevertheless try to stay in power. In late 2020, that was the unthinkable that happened. The terror attack that I describe in this lesson took place, but it was us against us. The terrorists who stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021, they were us. They were Americans. And they were taking part in the scenario that I described here. The sudden disaster which somehow makes it okay for the entire system to be changed. Now, that did not work. That was held off. But that unthinkability, we now have to recognize as thinkable. The whole point of this lesson, be calm when the unthinkable arrives, is to recognize that the unthinkable is not only thinkable, it's possible. And if it's possible, that means that you too have to be possible. You too have to do some things which perhaps you wouldn't have thought about doing before. And in this particular case, what we have to do is we have to speak plainly about what happened in the United States. There was a coup attempt by a sitting president. We have to record those events. We have to have digital forensic specialists, historians, journalists, lawyers, a broad coalition of investigators and investigations to make sure that those events become things that children 20 years, 50 years, 100 years from now can read about and understand. But most of all, we also have to recognize that what happened in January 2021 was a blueprint for the next coup. The thing about failed coups is they don't just go away. Failed coups are lessons for those who wish to carry out successful coups. That's what a failed coup is. It's the thing that comes before a successful coup. Unless, of course, we're able to ourselves make that next coup thinkable. If we realize that it's thinkable, if we realize that it's possible, then we can be calm. Then we can be prepared. Then we can do the things in the next 4 years that have to be done to make sure that that scenario doesn't take place. I'll speak a little bit more about that when I talk about the next lesson, lesson 19. But for now, this is the end. This was lesson 18, be calm when the unthinkable arrives. I realize it's a challenge. I realize it's a challenge to speak about all of these things which are stressful and demanding and unexpected, and then talk about being calm. But that's precisely why it's a lesson. The calm is the lesson, because the stress, the anxiety, the willingness to lay down and let other people interpret events for you, that's what makes tyranny possible. That's what makes authoritarian regime changes possible. We can't do everything by ourselves. For some things, we really do need other people and institutions. But this reaction of being calm when the unthinkable arrives, that is something that we can do for ourselves. Thanks.
Is basically an indigent fund. It's not called that. I forget what it's called. I should have wrote it down. Because everybody wants the facts. We have a hospital 25.
I'm Timothy Snyder. It's August of 2021, and I'm making a series of short films about my book on tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century. I'm revisiting this book because it's been almost 5 years since I wrote it. A lot of the things that I wrote about, unfortunately, became reality. A lot of the tendencies that I warned against are unfortunately still with us. And with the help of the fantastic artist Nora Krug, we've produced a new version of the book with some updated text, most importantly with art, which I think makes the book deeper, not just accessible, but more deeper and more interesting, at least for me, and I hope also for you. So thanks to this work with Nora, I've been revisiting the lessons of the book, and each of these films is an occasion for me to say a word about where the lesson came from and how the lesson will matter in the 2020s and moving into the future. This is number 19, lesson number 19 of On Tyranny. Lesson 19 is Be a Patriot. It's very short and simple. Takes just a second to read. Be a patriot. Set a good example of what America means for the generations to come. They will need it. Now, as those of you who have read the book will know, in each lesson, in each chapter, I have a lesson, and then I have an explanation, the history that stands behind the lesson, the actions that are recommended by the lesson. In this lesson, lesson number 19, I try to make a distinction between a patriot and a nationalist, where a nationalist defends what is about his or her country, whereas a patriot is someone who wants the best for his or her country, who wants his or her country to live up to the ideals that the country is supposed to live up to. And this is actually a very, very important distinction, because if you defend whatever happens, whatever is, you're also defending decline. If you defend whatever people do in the name of America as normal, then you're participating in that decline. A patriot is someone who recognizes that values are real, that democracy cannot function without values, that our country isn't just what it is or seems to be. Our country is also what it might be and what it should be. So patriotism is a value. It's the value which says we should defend other values. We should realize what is at stake. So looking forward into the 2020s, what is at stake? I think perhaps most fundamentally what's at stake is the right of Americans to vote for their elected representatives. This, it would seem, would be a very simple American patriotic value. We all, or at least most of us, think that we live in a democracy, or should live in a democracy. Democracy means the people rule. And for the people to rule, their votes have to count. Their votes have to be possible, and their votes have to count. So a basic patriotic value in this country, in the United States, and of course not only, is the right to vote. What's at stake is that right to vote is being taken away from a lot of our fellow Americans. And insofar as we don't recognize that Native Americans and Latinos, and above all, African Americans, are going to have a harder time voting in 2022 and 2024 than they did in 2020. If we don't recognize that, if we don't do something about it, then we are taking part in it. Then we are part of the problem. If we just say, oh, America is a democracy no matter what, then we're nationalists. If we're patriots, if we recognize that there's a right to vote, that it's unacceptable to make it harder for people to vote, that our values are only realized when we make it possible for people to vote. What is at stake is whether or not we will have elections that really count as elections in 2024. Because unfortunately, if we allow voter suppression to proceed, a couple of things will happen. One thing that will happen is that people whose votes are suppressed will be upset, and understandably. And if they are upset and they do something, then the people who have suppressed their votes will use their reaction against them, will try to start a culture war and try to change the whole subject of our politics away from democracy and representation and policy towards polarization and racial hatred and spectacle. More specifically, the way this can go in 2024 is that if states take over the right to count votes, and if state legislatures take over the right to determine how electoral votes are going to be allocated, we could very well have the scenario of 2021 actually realized in 2025. That is to say, a presidential candidate who loses not only the popular vote, but also the electoral college vote could nevertheless be named president of the United States. Now, that's the kind of thing which, as an American patriot, I would very much not like to see happen. That's the kind of thing which would go against the values that patriots would stand for. But if we are just nationalists, if we defend whatever happens, that, I'm afraid, is the path of least resistance. If we want to prevent something like this, we have to be for values, and we have to act to make sure this specific thing doesn't happen. So to sum it up, being a patriot is not about just what is. It's not about resting on your laurels or talking about how great you are or saying the institutions are good or praising your own constitution. Being a patriot is not about what is. Being a patriot is about what could be and what should be, because frankly, what is not good enough. American patriots are going to have to demand and act in such a way that we live not just in what we call a democracy, but what really is a democracy. That was lesson number 19. Thank you.
Responsible
none of us is prepared to die for freedom.
If they lose Medicaid and they don't get dialysis, what happens when you don't get dialysis? You pass away.
The thing that is terrifying is how many people don't understand what the economic ripple of that's going to be. It is going, just from taking those things away, if we lose only 10 to 15% of people that were using those, only 10 to 15% of them die, that is going to cause a 10 to 15% decrease in the GDP. Because so much of the industry relies on
Yeah, these people lack foresight. They can't see the forest through the trees on these. That's the thing I like to point to my home state of Indiana and as a blueprint for their whole agenda.
how to do things wrong.
Yeah, they've got the situation now where
I mean, they're in West Virginia, literally. These are blueprints. Poorly run something, yeah.
Right now in Indiana, there's been a Congress supermajority and the Republicans for years now, and now they've got former U.S. Senator Mike Braun as governor. Indiana is one of the more affordable states in this country to live in, but now they're cutting property taxes. That
Hey, if you get me to this $25 goal here, I'll split it in half with Crow for making the logo. I'll cash app him half of it. Hey, Tim, Tim, I'm in Southern Indiana. I don't actually. I'm from Louisville originally, and then I moved about an hour and a half. I'm right near Henderson, Kentucky, if that tells you anything. Oh yeah, so okay, yeah, you're up there a ways then. Yeah, I got you.
that's
I lived in Charlotte for 10 years, ADHD or ADH, after I got out of the Marine Corps. Yeah, I moved to Charlotte after I got out of the Marine Corps. I was there for 10 years, then moved back to Louisville in 2013. I was a 0451 parachute rigger, and then I was I served my last 7 years in a force reconnaissance unit. 0411? Oh, 311. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, so you're a good old grunt. Oh, oh, well, thank you for your service and Semper Fi. Yeah, yeah. Jumping out of planes, getting it. So my main job was I was the insertion and extraction officer. So we would go in by fast roping or rappelling or parachuting, things like that. Then I was in charge of putting all that together. So yeah, good question. Hmm. Do you think you don't think we'll get an extension on this 30 days on Canada and Mexico? Yeah, yeah. You talking about you talking about Trudeau?
Yeah, when Trudeau is done, and
Yeah.
Fortunately for Muscratina and Trump on that one, the whole tariff thing has actually aligned a lot of the conservatives that were standing against Trudeau to turn around and start backing Trudeau because Trudeau is also doing the Americans are ally. To go to the current government that would come back into place in the next election. Eight is winning. Well, you also got to remember a lot of the people that are currently backing the current government, technocrats, something like 50% of the entire global internet media.
G2. Uh, where are you at? Okay, that's what I thought. I have another G2 in lowercase that's a friendly. I thought it was the same one.
Did you guys see the interview of Elon in the Oval Office?
Yeah, where his son said, "Want you to shut your mouth."
He said, "Shut, shut."
like everybody up here is a parent, right? Like we're all parents.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that shit was hilarious. Yeah, and picking boogers and stuff on live TV.
Dress code that's long standing for the Oval Office.
I mean, is there a single conservative parent out there who would have been at McDonald's with a little kid acting like that and not said something to the parent?
Yeah, exactly.
If it was one of their idols, they would not have said Jimmy.
Well, the new scuttlebutt on the street about Elon's kid is essentially saying Elon's
Yeah.
out and said, "Well, no, but I'll buy."
Yeah.
When they're talking about like sexualizing them.
Yeah. No, I actually read something out of one of my books regarding the whole, man, what book was it? On why that they are saying Trump is your daddy, but it goes back to, I need to find it, but I did a post on it as why that came to be. Fuck, I can't find the book right now, but there, if you trace back in history, um,
I mean, growing up, I was growing up like most people.
No, I'm
I guess what I'm saying
Somebody who's in the community.
it seems like they're projecting Trump's your daddy when Trump is actually their daddy,
right.
a daddy figure.
Yeah. Here's the piece I was talking about. It's actually in this book, How Fascism Works by Jason Stanley. It says right here, the patriarchal family is one ideal that fascist politicians intend to create in society or return to, as they claim. The patriarchal family is always represented as a central part of the nation's traditions, diminished even recently by the advent of liberalism and cosmopolitanism. But it says, in a fascist society, the leader of the nation is analogous to the father in the traditional patriarchal family, which is, I think, I just thought that was kind of interesting that it says it. But the leader is the father of his nation, and his strength and power are the source of his legal authority. I just thought that was interesting comparison. Yeah, 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 no problem. That's a great book, by the way. Yeah, Hmm. Oh wow. I got you. Yeah.
One is second thought, and the other is philosophy tube.
I sent JD JPD 75 a request to come up. I bet he doesn't because he's scared. But if you want to come up, we'll certainly tell you what the reason of this chat is. By the way, I'm streaming on YouTube right now. By the way, if anybody wants to check out my new setup.
Has anybody looked into the army of God?
Mm-mm. No.
The Pentecostal movement that's popping up all over.
Okay, see that's all. Put it very flatly, and the man releases the craziest rap videos I've ever seen in my life. It's just like bashes insane.
That gun cult's like a few miles away from where my parents live in Pennsylvania.
That's wild.
Down in Newfoundland, yeah.
Well, they're starting a small world after all. They're starting cults all over the country. There's a Pentecostal movement. It's I can't think of the name. Life something church. Life Touch Life.
No. So like in the one I'm talking about, the leader like wears a crown made out of 50 cal rounds.
Yeah.
What?
They worship their M16s. Or
What?
M15s, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and it was founded by the son of the leader of the Moonies. Like that big cult from the 80s, like his son started this Army of God, which is a gun cult, and like he makes rap videos, and it's like crazy. I love weird shit. I mean, it's just because I'm in anthropology and cultural anthropology, so of course I care about fucking cults.
So, I need to ask you guys, what is your take on a theory I've been hearing that we're going to be absolute sharp increase of this crazy that we have seen the last since 2008 when Obama was elected is part of an extinction burst for the old cis white patriarchal society.
They've been making this argument forever that it's a swan sauce because when you look at actual studies of political beliefs held, you'll find that each generation tends to be more progressive than the last. So I have always written off a bunch of what's going on, even with the rise of my party.
I believe that's to be true. The problem is the damage they're going to do on their way out.
So I see that we're all on the same page about that.
I mean, I think it's a fair point to really look at because it's been a known thing that white people are not going to be the majority in this country. I think it was at 2035 now, as they're saying that that's supposedly when it's supposed to happen, and it's all these. You know, I try not to be ageist, but it's all these boomers that just have to consistently have the spotlight on them and be catered to at every point of their lives.
And Gunny, if you download the background that I sent you that has like a topic on it, it'll fit perfectly into the exact one you did right now.
Okay, I'm looking at it. You talking about the why did you vote for?
Yep, that one.
Okay, hang on. I'll go. You guys keep talking. I'm gonna get it.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. Is like it's these old, frail white men that have always been the focus of every discussion and always have to have the attention and they're never wrong. And they're dealing with their own mortality. I think it's terrifying to them. And they just
I see it really spreading to Generation X right now.
I can see that too, yeah.
I'm gonna find a better place for your cash after I've done my stuff, but I can work on that later. I just wanted to point out this one is sized for this green screen.
That's perfect. Yeah, I like it. That's perfect.
Gunny, I was going to suggest you should have a crow somehow put the logo that he just made for you on your fuck Trump background.
Oh, yeah,
Flag?
yeah. With my Harley or with my Harley? Yeah.
Yeah, with that one, yeah. You should put that on the front.
Okay.
Well, Bernie would have to do this. The increase, especially with it's the motorcycle one, is why did you vote to chair the parliament?
Yeah. He he brought up Harley Davidson yesterday, and he made a claim that Harley Davidson had to open up a plant in India, which they did years and years ago, and it was for the 650 and the 750, but that plant is no longer there. So he's like talking about information that's like 10 years old. So again,
They moved that plant over there, or production over there, when he was in office.
yeah.
And he kept saying, I'm going to bring all the companies back and the jobs, and Harley goes over.
Now, yeah, now they did open up a plant in Thailand, where they're going to be doing some of the manufacturing. I think this year's models, moving forward. I haven't like done a deep dive into it, but that plant in India is closed, and the one in Thailand is open.
Gunny, your mic's muted now.
Okay.
Maybe you have a really loud background,
Yeah.
like you get drowned out.
I am so sorry. I am a machinist, so I'm trying to get that on mute all the time. So speaking is because I have a lot of.
Yeah. Can everybody else hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Because normally I use this mic right here, these mics right here, but my phone was dying, so I had to plug in my charger for my laptop to get the boot to charge a little bit more. But normally when I do this, it cleans up the sound a good bit.
I'm gonna hop down, brother. Thanks for having me up.
Yeah, man.
Nice to build the community out.
Yes, sir. If you ever see me up and you want to come up, man, just request up.
All right, you folks have a good day.
All right, thank you.
You too.
All right. I'm probably going to go ahead and stop the live right here because I got to go live in an hour and a half anyway for Friendly Friday, from 12 to 2. So if you are up here now and want to come back and participate, then we can do that as well. So Friendly Friday from 12 to 2.
It's just nice to meet people who actually think the same, even though you guys are pissy about my third-party vote.
Red state and you voted third party, I can't fault you for it because I'm in a heavy blue state, but I'm a little blue dot in one of the red counties in the area.
But we did get a blue governor again.
What state? I wanted to ask what state you were in because I was driving when you brought that up. And I'm like, wait, but where are you? Because
I'm in North Carolina.
see, it could have made a difference.
No, we couldn't.
Yes, because everybody was looking at North Carolina possibly being going.
And it's nonsense.
Well, maybe because people were voting third party. I'm just saying.
People don't look at the internal numbers. I mean, I'm at the county board of elections constantly because they keep screwing up elections.
What area are you in? What part of North Carolina are you in?
I live in a little section called Vance County along the Virginia border.
Oh, so you're okay.
You're north of Raleigh.
Okay, I know where you're at. Yeah. I used to have accounts up in Raleigh when I was selling forklifts, so yeah, I know where you're at.
Yeah, right along the border north of Raleigh and Durham.
I got you. All right, well we're gonna set.
Yourselves a wonderful day and for the weekend.
All right, see you guys. All right,
Happy Valentine's Day.
yeah, look me up at around. Yeah.
My husband's overseas, so I'm like, I don't even pay attention.
Okay. All right, well check me out around noon, and we'll go from there. Thank you guys.